This is the Orlando Sentinel editorial board interview with Orange County judicial candidates in Group 8. We have our incumbent, Judge Elizabeth Starr, and her challenger, Michael Morris. And we are just going to take a few minutes, go through some questions that we have prepared for them. What you think of as judicial temperament and what qualities are important, and how that should impact a judge's courtroom management. So I guess we'll start with our challenger, Mr. Morris.
Sure. As far as judicial temperament, I think we all know how to behave in a courtroom. Hopefully we know how to behave in a courtroom. Certainly what you want to look for is somebody who is fair, who will listen to everybody, and who will take everything into consideration. Sometimes you do have to cut people off as far as arguments. So as long as somebody does it politely, I certainly think that's part of judicial temperament. But it's really certainly just being civil. And I think that that's something that almost all lawyers do know how to do. I don't think it's very difficult to do in a lot of situations for lawyers who've been trained even in the most heated of arguments, but it's certainly something that you do have to watch out for. And just like everyone else, our tempers do every once in a while get the best of us, but you can certainly always take a break.
This is a very important question, and probably the most important question, because it goes back to what the people need on the bench. And I believe it really comes down to your ability to be compassionate and empathize with everybody that comes before you, especially in county court, both self-represented people and the hardworking lawyers. And the most important thing I have to say is, you know, life is very short and we all have struggles and we all are working very hard to make ends meet and to enjoy our lives. And, you know, this practice is stressful for the lawyers that have to work in it and advocate and fight for their clients' rights. And it's also very stressful for self-represented people who are in the most vulnerable part of their lives, and they have this government intrusion happening to them. And so they're not at their best, and they're going to be giving you probably not their best foot forward. They're stressed. And so it's important for the judge to have that life experience and those similar experiences so that they can understand and not take things personally. I get yelled at all the time. I have to evict people. I have to follow the law, but it's never okay for me to take it out on them. That's why I'm in community service. I've been in community service my entire 23 years in public service. I've done consumer complaints where literally people complain to me, and it's my job to navigate and assist them and always extend compassion and understanding, because I know that it's not their best moment. They're stressed. And so ultimately it's your life experience that's important. You know, I've been through a lot in my life. You know, I've struggled financially. I've been in the shoes of the litigants and the lawyers, and I understand the stress. And, you know, being a cancer survivor, I understand that life is, you know, unpredictable. And, you know, we need to be careful that, you know, our last day may be tomorrow. And while these issues are super important to these litigants and the lawyers at the moment, it's my job to filter through thousands, 10,000s of cases, and not take anything personally, and inject the love and compassion so that they can easily navigate through it. So that empathy, that compassion, that understanding is probably the most important attribute that a judge can have. And I hope, you know, every day, you know, you start the day and hope that you can do a good job doing that. It's not easy, but that's the most important thing.
I had a more sort of a more personal question for the both of you. Not so much personal, but more related to the campaign. as was said before, you guys have been through several of these debate sort of discussion formats before. And you obviously must know a little bit about each other. What for voters who are looking in on you for the first time, can you tell me one difference that you have from your opponent that sort of sets you apart? Judge Starr, we'll start with you.
Well, I'll be honest, I don't know a lot about my opponent. I never met him before, after our race started. I can tell you about myself. I bring to the table fundamentals from immigrant parents. My parents came to this country with not a few dollars in their pocket and English, no English when they came here. They struggled to learn English and struggled to work multiple jobs. And, you know, those fundamentals of hard work and education, not for success, but for survival, really drove me into public service. You know, when I graduated college, I had a double major in business management and economics, and I worked on Wall Street for a year. And I was set off in Wall Street to be on a very lucrative path. And I walked away from it because it wasn't purposeful to me. And I believe it's because my parents instilled in me more than just making money. And my whole family is in service, public service. My brother's in nonprofit. It's important to us. It's important to me. It's important to my family. And now that I'm raising my kids, it's important to us. My husband's he's the president of the board of the Holocaust Museum. These are things that are important to me, and what drive my public service. And I've been in public service my entire career. I was a prosecutor in Miami, the most demanding prosecuting office in the whole country. I worked under 3 attorneys general at the Attorney General's office doing consumer protection, protecting citizens and small businesses and businesses from fraud. I've dedicated my whole career to public service and community service, doing guardian ad litem and Rotary and all those kinds of things. So that's who I am. And if I hope that that's important to the community, because that's what keeps me connected to the community. But I think most importantly, it's my struggles and my humble beginnings that allow me to relate to the people that come before me. And that's what I feel I bring to the table. The other thing I think that I bring is my dedication to the law.
Thank you. I appreciate that answer. Mr. Morris, tell me from your own perspective, what do you feel sort of sets you apart and what differs you in this race?
Well, as Judge Starr did say, we don't really know a lot about each other. We haven't met before the campaign, quite frankly. I will say that I have been a lawyer for 26, almost 27 years now, I guess. And I've been mostly in family law during that time. I've certainly learned a lot of patience doing family law. You just have to. You get the good and the bad. I do the divorces and the adoptions. So I get the good and the bad. But it is nice to be able to take people through troubling times, through their difficult times in the divorces. So I do like that aspect of what I do. I did come from a military family, and so I moved quite a bit as a child, and I certainly know how to adapt to new situations. To be put down in a strange place and have to adapt is certainly something I've learned how to do. Also, I am openly LGBT, and that has actually given me a perspective on how it is to have society kind of view you as the other in a way. And so I certainly take all of those experiences, and I can certainly use those on the bench. I certainly do use them in my practice. It's certainly always good to be able to help clients. And over the course of the years, I have been able to be a guardian ad litem in probably tens of cases. I'm not completely sure. of the number, but I've certainly helped a lot of children achieve permanency, either through guardianships, adoption, or reuniting with their parents. So those are all good outcomes for the children.
Thank you.
I have kind of like a follow-up question to this. Although the judicial candidates can give positions on specific issues, you've both mentioned right now your backgrounds and life experiences. And on your webpage, both of you mentioned child welfare, mental health, and even homelessness as issues that are priorities for you. With the boom of people that have been moving to Central Florida within the past few years, this year might be the first time that many people vote in this cycle, especially a lot of people within the Latino community. I'm Puerto Rican, and I know that there's a lot of Puerto Ricans that have moved to Central Florida. So having said that, for people that are voting for the first time and all others that haven't really been involved much, why is voting for a judicial candidate important, and why are you the best candidate? If we can start with Mrs. Starr.
Voting is the most important thing, especially right now with everything that's going on. And it's one of those things that is really in the foundation of my judicial philosophy. I believe in our three separate branches of government because my parents came from a dictatorship in a different country where they had very little rights. And so this American dream that we're living is an incredible opportunity. And our whole system of government relies on the people to vote. They must vote. They must vote for the judges. They must vote for legislatures. If they don't like the laws, it's the judge's job to say what the law is and not create law. It's not our jobs to create law. That's the thing they always say, you don't want a judge who rules based on what they had for breakfast, right? You want a judge that's going to follow the law, but where does that law come from? That law comes from the people, and they have to vote for their legislatures to write the laws that the people want, that the people deserve. And so it's not the judges that the people should be voting for only. They should be knowledgeable about everything that's going on in their community, everything that's important, every issue that means something to them. They need to get out and vote. And, it's the judge's role to follow that law that they want. So I would want a judge that follows the law that the people voted for. That's what I believe in. That is my judicial philosophy. I don't want the power all in the courts. I wouldn't trust one judge to make a decision and decide what should be the law every 6 years. We run every 6 years. I want a judge who is going to be loyal to what is written down, and that is by the legislature, and the legislatures are voted in by the people. So it's most important for the people to vote for those legislatures so that they get what they want, and then they can trust in the court system to follow that law. And that's my judicial philosophy. And that's why it's so important that everybody votes.
Thank you. Mr. Morris?
Certainly, I agree that everybody should vote. Certainly, you should learn who the candidates are. If there's any way for you to do that, there are web searches you can do. You can contact organizations. You can go to forums like the various hobnobs that are in the community and educate yourself about who the candidates are. Certainly, you should have an informed vote, but you can inform yourself about who to vote for. And so, as has been mentioned, we are judges, we are not legislators. We will ascertain what the facts are in a given situation, apply the law, and then rule. We are not creating law, hopefully. And so, certainly I agree that that's what we should be doing. And I think that's what most judges would certainly want us to do.
One of the unique characteristics of county court, which is frequently referred to as the people's court, is that many of the people who appear there, and Judge Starr, you had touched on this earlier, are not represented by attorneys. And that does leave judges with a significant burden, because on one hand, you have a litigant or a defendant who is at a significant disadvantage. On the other hand, you have the obligation to follow the rules of evidence, the rules of court, to not favor that person. And how do you strike, or how should a judge strike that balance and give people equity as well as justice?
First of all, I practice mainly in family law. Right now in family law, our pro se participants are probably almost at 65, 70%, somewhere in there. And the problem is, certainly as an attorney going against somebody who's pro se, you don't want the judge to bend over backwards for them and basically tell them what they should be doing. They are supposed to be in the shoes of an attorney, but you also certainly want to have some compassion for people and not run roughshod over them. So it is a tough balance to strike. I've seen judges who are able to do it, who do not suggest legal arguments for the people, but are able to guide them a little bit procedurally. And so that is the balance that I think a judge should strike. It is tough when you have that many pro se people, and obviously I realize in county court that is mainly the people's court, as it's called, and it would be my job to try to get disputes resolved as judiciously as possible and as expeditiously as possible.
So I spend a lot of time when they need it explaining the law and allowing time for them, whether it's relevant to the case or not, or relevant to my decision in the case or not, letting them be heard. Because at the end of the day, that's what they want. They want to tell me their story, and it's their time. And I mentioned this before, you have to put yourself in their shoes, and not just the self-represented litigants, but you have to let the lawyers do their jobs too. And a lot of times we hear a lot of arguments over and over from lawyers as well. But nevertheless, our job is to let people be heard. And sometimes, because I am experienced and I've been doing this for so long, I know the issues that I need to hear and the facts that are relevant to me to make my decision. And I just take a mental note of them and I jot my information down that I need to make the decision. But I allow them that time to speak and share. The most of the time in the self-represented venue, the traumatic events that have led them to this point. And then once they have the opportunity to be heard and they feel validated, when I listen very carefully, I'm a very empathetic person. I calculate how much information that I need to explain back to them in their story so that they can understand why it is my hands are tied in bad results for them, or sometimes it's a good result for them. But the big part of that is just giving the chance to have them be heard, and also explain to them what the law is and how the law works, and help them navigate through what's happening in their case so that they understand. Most of the frustrations is just a miscommunication or not understanding. I believe that in a million different applications of life, not just in the courtroom, but if you communicate frustration, you come to understand the situation and the other side, most of the time, the frustration and the negative reaction dissipates because you understand why things are happening. And I think people are just searching for understanding and validation in their vulnerable experience that they're having. And so once you do that, and that's not every case, the other part of being able to manage such a high demanding docket is knowing which cases need that, which people need that, and which people are okay. Sometimes I take time to share stories about my own life. I had a person tell me that they were struggling with a parent who had dementia, and I shared with them that my dad had dementia, and he was so thankful to just have a minute to connect on a life struggle that I happen to understand. So it's those kinds of things that I think are more important. It's the personal connection that you make. And yeah, you try and do it as quickly as you can.
Across Florida, many different kinds of specialty courts have come to pass dealing with people who have mental illness, people who are struggling with an addiction to alcohol or to drugs, people who have special circumstances like a background as a veteran, which I'm sure, you know. So I would ask, if you were to be chief judge for a day and you could pick any specialty court that Orange County doesn't have right now and get it started here, what would be your choice as one to establish here that isn't in operation now?
I was lucky enough to be assigned to a very special judge in Miami who, as you know, Miami has a high pandemic of homeless, mental health, drug addicted people. And if you look up or Google Judge Steve Leifman, he's a pioneer in mental health court services. And I was assigned to him as a new prosecutor. And when you're a new lawyer, like a child, you are completely absorbing your foundational skills of how you're going to be a legal servant in the future. And I'm very blessed to have had him really instill in me a deep passion to help the mental health community, mental health struggling community. He had a great courtroom where he would help people that were challenged get placement in mental health placement services. Our community needs to step up and help the court system do that. We rely significantly on our nonprofits for that. Beds are limited. I've attended as many community leadership events that support these types of services in our Central Florida area. So this would be 100% where I would go, especially with veterans, because, you know, veterans have a resource for services. They have funding. So the veterans are the lucky ones, but what about those that are not veterans who don't have those veteran resources to help them with housing and money and funding? So this is a big problem. I know that Florida is ranked the lowest or one of the lowest on mental health services, and 100%. I thank Steve Leifman for being such an impact in my life. And I hope, you know, that's something that we can improve on in our Central Florida area. And that's exactly where I would go and devote my time and resources with.
I represent a lot of parents in dependency court who are accused of abuse, abandonment, or neglect. And we do have drug courts for those people. We do have an early childhood court too. And I thought we had a mental health court here in Orange County, but I'm not completely sure. But that's not something that my people are eligible to go to. Certainly, I do think that's a good idea to have the specialty courts. I will tell you that the parents I've seen in the drug courts usually do much better. They get much more individual attention. They get much more encouragement than they would get otherwise in the court system. And they usually have more funding resources through grants or whatever. And so I certainly am in favor of specialty courts. I do think that they need to be probably funded a little bit better and set up a little bit better in the future. But those are things for court administration, essentially, not the judges themselves. But we can certainly work on those things, and I certainly am in favor of specialty courts. To answer the question specifically, if we don't have a mental health court, I think that would be a good idea. I believe we already do have a veterans court too, as well. So I think that those are good ideas. As far as other specialty courts, something for homelessness would be good if we could do it. I'm just not sure it could be done, and that might require some planning and some meeting.
Well, I'm always surprised when I look at my clock and realize that we have come to the end of our time. It's been so enjoyable to talk with you about these issues, and I know that voters are going to appreciate your insight as well. What I'd like to ask you each to do now is to take a minute or two and just kind of sum up your candidacy for judge and why voters should support you, and just kind of make your pitch. And we will start with our challenger, Mr. Morris.
Okay. Certainly, I've been an early adapter of video technology. I think that's something that's been very helpful for our courts the last few years, and I certainly would like to see that continue even beyond the pandemic, because I do believe, especially in a world where attorneys appear from other cities and we have a very mobile population here in Orange County, I think that's very helpful. I would certainly also say that I believe that I can add to the LGBT representation on the court. I do believe that I am certainly efficient in what I do, and I do believe I can help move cases along. And thank you very much.
Judge Starr?
Well, I have to say, the last 7 years being a county judge has been so rewarding, and I have been so honored to have served our community in this capacity. County court is where my heart is. It's where I met my husband. It's where I've met the best of friends, and it is where my heart is, and my heart is what I have given back to it over the last 7 years. I have been committed to public service and community service for the past 23 years in Florida and 20 years in Central Florida. I've been endorsed by our local mayors, Buddy Dyer, former mayor, Linda Chapin, Apopka, Windermere, Winter Park, Oakland, Ocoee, Belle Isle, Edgewood, Maitland, Fraternal Order of Police, West Orange Political Alliance, 16 past presidents of our Orange County Bar Association, and so many more that you could check on my website. I have given my heart to county court. It has been an absolute honor, and I would love nothing more for the support to continue serving our beautiful Orange County. Thank you.
Well, I thank you both very much. We will be endorsing in your race, and those should be coming out soon.